Okay, so we're live. Welcome back to the Magic Minds podcast. I'm Matt Burke. You're watching and listening to the Liberties #1 podcast. Yup the Liberties, yup the Flats. On the show today, I'm joined by an awesome human being by the name of Enda O'Doherty. Enda, what's a crack?
That's the crack. I'm still stuck on the yup. I love the yup.
Yup the Flats.
Yeah, do you know what? We speak English, but you can go anywhere around the world and say yup the flats, and people go, What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
anyone in Ireland instantly goes, yep, gotcha.
Yeah, I just love the Flats. I just, every chance I get, and it's not because I felt, people have often said it's a kind of territorial because you felt suppressed. And I just am very proud. I'm proud of where I work in a hospital. I'm very proud of from the Flats. I'm extremely proud of the Liberties and my family. And I just like to sing about the things I'm proud of. It's important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is important. It's important. Like, I know anytime we talk, like the last time we spoke, I came away from the conversation. I often have a think back, and there was something that came out of the conversation was learning to love yourself. That's something I learned to do, and where you are, who you're with, where you're from. To have value on it and love it. It's good.
Yeah, like people around the Liberties, it's part of my identity. It's not who I am, but it's created me. And the people around here have been really good to me, and it's part of my personality. So I wear it. There was a time where I was a little bit ashamed, that I'm from the Flats. I wear Air Max and I have a certain tone and I say words in a certain way. But now I just embody it. It's just I don't care. It's just who I am. It's important.
Yeah, I did a speaking gig and mental health thing in America last year, and I know we're both from Ireland, we've different accents, we're from different places, but I got off the plane and the Americans were like, "Oh my God, your accent is beautiful. You Irish guys, say something." And I was like, "Good morning, how are you?" And they were like, "Oh my God, say it again." And then this lady says, "Oh my God, your accent is so beautiful." And I said, "I'll tell you a funny thing about that accent." She said, "What?" I said, "I didn't have one when I was on the plane. I only got one when everyone thinks everyone thinks they have no accent until you go somewhere else."
Yeah, yeah. Guys, I've asked Enda to come on the show. Enda is, as I say, an incredible human being. He's the author of a book called I'm Fine. I've not read it yet. He's a motivational speaker. He's climbed mountains. He's run 9 marathons in 8 days with a washing machine strapped to his back. He's battled with addiction, mental health advocate, struggled with his own mental health. Is there anything you don't do, Enda? Yeah.
I was going to say we leave it there. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Good luck. And go and have me dinner. Yeah, that's probably sums up me. Look, the most common thing I say to people is I'm too much. And so what do you mean? I said, I care too much. I worry too much. I probably eat too much. I gamble too much. For a long part of my life, I drank too much. I have an alcohol addiction. I'm always wary when I hear people saying, I used to have an alcohol problem. I have an addiction for life. It's me. But like we said at the start about loving the Liberties and loving where you're from, I don't love being an alcoholic. It was tough times, and coming off it was even tougher. But it's certainly part of me. It made me a better person. It made me a kinder husband. It made me a better dad. It makes me a real mental health speaker because I'm not talking about something I've read in a book. I'm talking about something I've lived. So yeah, it's part of me, Matt. I'm not embarrassed about it. Like I used to be embarrassed telling people. It's funny. I'm an assistant principal in a school still, and kids are always amazed when I'm honest with them and tell them things like I didn't learn to read and write till I was 12 because I had dyslexia, which in the 1980s it was called stupid or lazy fecker, and I wasn't either. But I still like, oh God, if you saw my handwriting, it's terrible. I don't know if you can't. No, you won't make that out. But it's handwriting. I still can't write, but. Like it's a good theme, I suppose, for the rest of my life is when I came across a problem, I found a way around it. So I love my technology and I'm a real nerd, but the real reason is because no one can read what I can write, and I still can't spell, but it didn't stop me being a teacher for 30 years.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we have something in common then. And I too had difficulty with school, failed loads, my leaving, but my handwriting is shocking because lads used to say to me, "Who wrote your homework?" Christy Brown. Uh,
Yeah.
I wrote that in my book. Do you know what I'm just listening to? And I read the book The Alchemist just recently, and in what you were just speaking there, you had difficult times, you had the addiction, but you turned that lead into gold. You have used your poison as into turned it into your passion now. It's brilliant. So could you share with us a little bit about your life growing up as a child, or life?
Yeah, so as a kid, I suppose my parents we grew up in Mullingar, and my parents moved to West Wicklow, about 1972. and they bought a small shop. You know, in those shops where you couldn't touch anything, you had to ask the girl behind the counter for sweets or everything was sealed off. And I remember the first night we walked into the shop because I was fascinated by the sweets. And then we went into the store, and I said, I'm going to go see more sweets. And there's about 60 coffins stacked on top of each other because they were the Undertaker, the shop, the typical Irish traditional small shop. But my dad had this mad idea that there was a thing coming to Ireland called supermarkets. And I remember him explaining this concept that you get all the food in one shop. And he built this supermarket and ran it, and sure, that's where I grew up. So it was a pretty, I suppose, idyllic childhood in loads of ways. I'm not sure I fitted in too, in that, like, if you saw the Little House on the Prairie, if you remember the I can't remember their names now. Oh God, they owned the shop anyway. Not the Waltons, no. Little House on the Prairie. There was the spoiled kids that owned the shop, and I suppose that was a bit of my existence, and that it was a tough time, being the kid in the small village where your parents seemed to be mega rich and Ireland was falling apart with a recession,
Where was it?
In Dunlavin it was called. It's about 10 miles from Naas.
Right.
But I suppose fast forward, I went to college, and I had grown up in a small village where, you didn't go to the pub, you didn't go out, you didn't, everyone was well behaved, everyone knew everyone. And I hit college, and Jesus, Matt, there was women. Wall to wall, you could drink as much as you like, you could stay out as late, and I went completely balubas. I lost the plot. Night one in college, I went out, and 9 months later, I was still on the sesh. And didn't help that my parents owned an off license, so that wasn't a great thing. So I was going back to college for the sesh with loads of booze. But I suppose, like, I often tell people, I wonder if I grew up in Afghanistan, would I still be an alcoholic? It's because in Ireland, like, the thing about alcohol is, the baby's born, we wet the baby's head. The baby's first communion, right? Put the kids in the bouncy castle in the garden. Let's go and get hammered in the house. Confirmation, let's repeat what we did for the first communion because it went so well. The baby's 18, right? We'll bring you out for your first pint. The baby's 21. Let's go and get hammered. You're getting married. Well, geez, we'll have to have a stag night. Let's get trashed. The first baby is born, and you're back to the start again. We won the county final. Let's fill that cup, boys. We lost the county final. Feck it, let's go and get hammered. Jimmy died. I hated him. Are you going to the removal? I am. Yeah, there'd be a few pints in a sandwich. So in Ireland, alcohol permeates everything. And, like, don't get me wrong. I'm like, geez, as an alcoholic, I'm the best person. If you have a party in your house, Matt, put me in charge of the bar, because I pour measures that normal humans wouldn't dare to pour. I don't object to people drinking and having fun, and it's part of very much culturally what we are. But for me, like, I just sank deeper and deeper, and I did what I normally do. I did too much of it, and before I knew it, I was drinking. Like, I suppose I often tell people at my worst or best. I was drinking maybe 3-4 bottles of whiskey a week. My Friday night drink was usually a pint glass of vodka, and, like, it's hard to imagine now, but it got to a point. It was like drinking a glass of baby sham for most people. I usually would drink a bottle of cough syrup with the pint glass of vodka, and I know now, like, very lucky I didn't kill myself doing that. But that was peppered with maybe 5 or 6 pints of cider during the week. Then the pretense at mealtime, I like a glass of wine. So that was 4 or 5 bottles of wine. It was getting up and up and up and up, But, people always think, I know, like, watching your podcast and talking about addiction, people like addiction, and it looks different in different shapes. Like, if you saw me in work, I looked like this, suited, booted, smiling, first in, last out, the happiest man in the world. But the truth is, I was dying slow. I describe it as slow motion suicide. Like, I was actually poisoning myself slowly, and it would have got to a point where the alcohol and the depression would have caused me to take my life, or my physical health. Your liver, your stomach can't take that. I was poisoning myself, but I thought it was tough, but again, like, I've heard loads of your guests talk, and I've heard yourself talk about this, but the addiction is bad. But mother God, cold turkey, trying to get sober and fighting to get sober was, for me anyway, personally, 1,000 times worse. It was just nightmare. And strangely, it's probably one of the things that keeps me safe. My cold turkey was so bad Like I didn't sleep for, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 months. I was climbing the walls. I had lost the plot completely. It was paranoia, delusional, suicidal, depression. I used to walk around. This is an awful thing to say. You know, when someone takes a camera, a flash of a photograph at a wedding or something, and you see the little red dots in front of your eyes. I used to see my memorial card, and I used to see my own funeral mass for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And I think the panic attacks, the night terrors, the cold sweats. It was a horrible, horrible. It's a time I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies. But you know, the funny thing is, for anyone watching this who might be going through hell right now, or if they've family going through hell, um, I couldn't have understood it till I got out the other side. But that hell is what keeps me safe. I've had opportunities to drink. I've had thoughts about drinking, but the thoughts of doing detox again frightens the Jesus out of me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Matt,
That's
I think this podcast is going to follow a very similar pattern. You know, my friend who helped me co-write the book said someone asked him what's the process, and he said I ask Enda one question, he talks for an hour and a half.
I'm all right. That just winds up and let you go. Come here, Andy. When was the finger on the pulse moment where you said to yourself, "I have a problem here"? Was there a specific road to Damascus moment where you said, "You know what, this is bad. I need to get this shit sorted," or was it just slow, tapered into it, and it just?
Do you know what I love? For the sake of drama in life, I'd love to tell you. I was on holidays in Morocco, and this camel, I tried kissing him, or I'd love to tell you something some. Like people always have that big
You got
moment
gonorrhea.
that was hit. Yeah, I was hit by lightning, and I got gonorrhea from the camel or something. No, it wasn't that. Like literally, I played a tennis match late at night in one match, and it was under lights, and I was wired with adrenaline, and I did what I normally do. I came home, and to sedate myself, I had a massive glass of brandy and milk, which was my favorite drink. And I remember years ago reading Brendan Behan used to drink brandy and milk. For anyone who's still drinking, if they want to try it, it's like an extreme adult Baileys. It's like the ultimate Baileys. So I was drinking a big, massive glass of this. But that night, between the adrenaline from the sport and the exhaustion, and then life issues that I wasn't dealing with, and then alcohol, I had a terrible night's sleep. And I woke up the next morning, and I knew this is not sustainable. And I just said to my wife, I said, "You know what, I'm done." And she used that tone of voice. Anyone who has a partner in their life will know she used this tone of voice. You know the way dogs, Matt, can only hear like a special whistle and we can't hear anything? Married men or people in relationships can hear this special tone. So my wife said, "That's great, love, are you?" Now, what she really meant was, not in a million light years could you give up alcohol. It's part of everything that you do. And I said, "What do you mean by that?" She said, "Nothing." And I said, "I know what you meant by that." And I suppose it's a recurring theme in my life. Someone challenges me, says, "I bet you couldn't do that. I bet you couldn't run up Kilimanjaro with a washing machine on your back." And away I go. Or I bet you couldn't run the length of Ireland. I bet you couldn't do 9 marathons in 8 days with a washing machine. And I said, "Watch me." And, I love to tell you it was a big, profound moment, but that was the start of it. And that was the 10th of November, 14 years ago, 10 o'clock. And haven't had a drink since. But
Yeah.
it's mad. It doesn't like it. It's, do you know if you ever, this sounds I hope people aren't having their dinner watching this, but do you know if you have a really bad diarrhea? Like, I mean, the absolute glow in the dark Chernobyl radioactive diarrhea, and you're dying, right?
Through the eye of a needle kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But at your worst, you can console yourself and say, "Do you know what? This will be over in a day. I'll take my tablet, or I'll take my." And what kills me about being an alcoholic, I suppose one of the things I find hardest about it is that this is me forever. I'll
Yeah.
fight this battle till the last day, and that annoys me that I can't just shake it off. I
Yeah. I'm like
and
that with mental health.
yeah, it's hard. Like, and we're talking about go having dips and troughs, peaks and troughs in your happiness. I was. Um, It's a mad story. The latest I came to drinking was about, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. I got invited as a speaker to go to London to speak to TripAdvisor, to their world sales team. And I was like, "Oh, Jesus, this is it. I have arrived. And I went to the airport. They sent a car to the airport. Do you know the Queen? When she's waving out the window of the car. I was driving out of the airport, and I was like, "The feck, look at me. This is brilliant."
Billy Big
And
Bullets.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I went to this hotel, and it looked like Downton Abbey, and it was fantastic. So I went down anyway, did the gig, and then when I got back to Ireland the next day, my wife said, "How'd you get on?" And I said, "Good, good." And she said, "Tell the truth." She said, "You look wrecked. What's wrong?" And I said, "I didn't sleep the whole night. I've been over in London." And she said, What do you mean you didn't sleep all night?" And I said, I was in the hotel room, and all I kept thinking was, do you know what? Go down to the bar, get yourself a bottle of brandy, go back up, hop in the bath. Nobody will know. You're in England. You don't know anyone." And she said, "Did you?" And I said, "No." I said, "But I spent the entire night walking up and down that hotel room. It was like my skin was being peeled off me." And I said it was the hardest battle. And I was talking to a friend of mine who works as an addiction counselor, and he's a very interesting guy. He was saying to me that sometimes people assume that if you have an addiction that you break out at a bad moment, when your dog dies, or someone leaves you, or something terrible happens, you lose your job. He said quite a lot of times too, whatever way we're wired, he said your brain was thinking, "Well done, Enda, you're done something great, you're making progress," and then there's a bit of you clicks in and says, "You deserve a treat." You know?
I can really resonate with that. I haven't drank now coming up to a year. I've had my problems with drink and drugs. I could have went to addiction for drugs, drinks, carbs, phones. I've an addictive personality. Fucking all sorts. Haribo, M&M. But I was having a great time there a couple of months ago. And I remember saying, "I'm a great form. I'd love a pint." Or like when I'm coming out, at the moment I struggle with anxiety and it's got deep and I'm coming out of a little bit, I've often said, "But you know what? I'll celebrate. I'll have a pint." And I can resonate with you. It's, you want to reward yourself. Is there, sure, we'll bump up the dopamine, we'll bump up the serotonin.
Yeah. I wrote a piece. I do a piece on Mondays for Kilkenny Radio called Motivation Inspiration, and I wrote a piece this morning. I'm interested to see will they play it now, because it's going to be a bit controversial. Because I started off at the beginning. I said, like, this is Monday, traditional local radio, and I said, "Does anyone want any drugs?" Because I've got good drugs, and I have this like creepy music playing as the intro. But the drugs I'm offering are oxytocin, serotonin, and then they explain to people how you get these good drugs that make us feel happy. So yeah, so I'm wondering will they play it, but no, something you said, the addictive nature of it. Like I get to speak to a lot of people like you, Matt, and like myself, people who have addiction or people who speak about mental health, and I see so many parallels in our lives and so many similarities, but like for what it's worth, like I had to learn to love me and not be embarrassed by me. Like, okay, I'm bald, so what? It's not my fault. I didn't do it. It's the hormones I have. It's the genetics I have. I'm an alcoholic. My dad was clever not to drink. If he had drank, I think I would have been the fifth in a row in our family to be an alcoholic. There's an element of society, but there's an element too of was programmed for it. But like what I've learned is, you were saying that you could. It's a great line, actually. I'm going to steal that. I could get addicted to Haribos, but like, like the thing about addiction is it doesn't always have to be bad. Like I'm addicted to making people happy. I'm addicted to laughter. I'm addicted to getting better as a speaker, and I want to speak on bigger stages. And I became addicted to the process of writing the book and getting the book published. I'm addicted to getting physically stronger. I'm addicted to learning. I'm addicted to, it's pathetic. I hope no one's going to puke now on this, but I'm ridiculously in love with my wife after 30 years. I'm addicted to her. I'm addicted to my kids, so it's, it's the way, what's his name? The way, well, Superman, I don't rate that highly. Like anyone who wears their jocks on the outside, he's like, you can fly and all that, but like the jocks outside is a mistake, right? But the way most of these superpowers, they all have something. Like Spider-Man was bitten by the spider, or Superman, they all have some special power. But like, it's funny thing is, what was killing me is now making me a living and making me happy.
Yeah, of course. That's the alchemist turning lead into gold. Who is your superhero then if you're not Superman? Superman or something?
Who are my heroes? Who inspires me?
Who was your superhero? You don't like Superman. Who was it?
I don't know. You know what? I go to every single Marvel movie with the wife and the kids, and I'm going to be honest, I fall sound asleep every single time. I have a massive plate of probably nachos and cheese, and then I snore like a pig. And they all say when we come out, "What do you think of that, Dad?" And I say, "Yeah, that one wasn't bad." And then they all burst out laughing because they know I've been asleep the whole way through the movie. We'll all need someone to inspire us. Like I wrote about it in the book, but one of the people I didn't realize that inspired me was my mother. I'll tell you a great story about her. She had a friend, and her friend got breast cancer and died. and she died in Naas Regional Hospital. But someone in the bed on the left of her was having their tonsils out, and someone on the right was, I don't know, having their appendix out. And here was my mum's friend Nora in the bed in the middle, and her family had to say goodbye to her because there was no hospice in Kildare, and there was no, it was no way to pass away, or there was no dignity, a bit of a curtain, and everyone listening to you crying or saying their last words. So, my mother came out and she said after the funeral, she said, right, I'm doing something about that. And in the 1980s, I don't know that she raised 3 or 4 million pounds, and she bought the old Jockey Hospital on the Curragh in Kildare, and she managed to open Kildare's first hospice, just on the strength of, she saw something that was wrong, and she said she's going to do something about it. So, and ironically, she died from breast cancer, and ironically, she was too sick for us to get her back to the hospice in Kildare, because she would have loved that for her last few days. But I think that was a major inspiration for me, and I think what it dawned on me too, Matt, was like, you could sit at home feeling sorry for yourself, but like I found one of the best ways for me to look after my anxiety and my depression and my stress or my sadness or my alcoholism. And the best therapy for me is to help other people. It really makes me feel good about myself. It really makes me feel I'm making a difference. It gives me energy, and it's a good thing. I should say, look, in case anyone's watching this, and what's the story with the washing machine? The washing machine was a simple mental health message. It was, don't carry something stupid around. Like that pencil is not very heavy, right? But it's not the weight of the pencil, it's how long you hold it. So if you hold your arm out and hold that pencil for 10 minutes, 10 minutes from now, that pencil will kill your arm. And I was suicidal, didn't attempt suicide. But the reason I was in such a bad place is I was holding problems. I wasn't asking for help. So my mental health message carrying my washing machine around the country and Africa was, don't carry something stupid, ask for help. And I suppose the second message too was to say to people that, the guy who you think is fine, the guy who's smiling, the guy who like if you I think when I went public first about my depression and alcoholism, I had loads of colleagues in work. I remember the first public event I spoke, and I had all these friends and came up and made like, Jesus, and we didn't know, we are so sorry, we could, like, oh my God, we feel terrible, we didn't help you. And I said, you'd never have known. The first thing you would have heard was, Jesus, did you hear the terrible news about Enda? His wife found him or something like that. Something, we've all heard that story a million times in Ireland. And I said I wouldn't have said anything, and like if people Google it afterwards, if you have time, go and have a look at the cover of the book, because the title is I'm Fine, but the picture underneath is me screaming, because that's the reality for a lot of people with their mental health. And back to the, who's your hero, who inspires you? Like, I know I can't stop suicide in Ireland. I can certainly change the conversation around mental health. One of the lovely things when people hear me speak at events, I love when they come up to me and they go, I've never laughed as much about suicide in my life. And I and even saying it, you can see them going, this isn't right, because people like the washing machine, this mad guy running up a mountain with a washing machine in his back, it gives people permission to laugh. It's a real conversation opener. And I think, around our own mental health and our stigma, like, we're not great at Ireland sometimes. Like, we're great jokers, but sometimes we don't talk about the important things, Like
Feelings or emotions. We don't talk feelings or emotions,
no, no,
Oh,
no. And like I had prostate surgery during the year, and I'm having great crack doing this, man. I won't do it to you now. Well, you can do answer in your head, but I've asked every man I've met for the last year, do they have a prostate? And they all go, yeah. And I go, what's it do? 99.9% of men go, haven't a clue. And I think it sums up mental, not mental health, but health in Ireland, that we all have this thing, and we have no clue what it does and what would happen if we lost it, or if it didn't work, or if, God forbid, it was cancerous, But I'm happy to for people to talk about it. Like, in Ireland pre-COVID, we were losing 8 young people, predominantly young people and predominantly young men. We were losing 8 a week to suicide, and that's going to be the same number or much bigger after COVID. And nobody was talking about it. And like my gut feeling was, I said to someone in an interview, I said, I don't think I can change it or stop it, but I think this, that, when I have grandchildren in the future and they say, Granddad, in 2017 or 18, when all those people were dying, why did nobody stand up and say this is wrong? Like, why did nobody do something? And I want to be able to turn to my grandkids and say, well, Granny and myself went to Africa and we ran up the tallest mountain in the world with a washing machine.
Yeah. Can we talk a bit about that? How did that come about? Like, I'm gonna decide to strap a washing machine to my back, run up a mountain, or do 8 marathons or 9 marathons in 8 days. Where did that come out of?
Well, loads of things in life, people sometimes think, people like me or people like you, we've this master plan. Like, a lot of things in my life happened completely by accident.
Yeah.
Um, so I had done a couple of Ironman events, and when I did the Ironman event, I suppose Ironman's motto is anything is possible, and for me, it certainly unleashed that anything is possible. And I had gone from running a marathon to running a marathon in about 5 hours, and now I was able to do what, swim for an hour and a half, cycle for 6 hours, and run a marathon in 4:45. So suddenly I realized, you know what, I'm really limiting myself here. And so I did Ironman UK. That was about 16 hours, 19 minutes. If anyone's if I know if loads of your followers are probably in the Dublin area, but so if you can imagine going to your local swimming pool in Dublin, swimming 200 lengths, then cycling from that swimming pool to Cork Airport. And when you get to Cork Airport, the first thing you do is run a marathon. So I did the first one in 16 hours, I think 19 minutes. And then I went back and did a UK one in 13 hours. But it began a process where I realized that the limits in my life were all in my head. They were all things that I had put, limits that I had put in place. And my wife said to me, we're sitting in Costa one day, and she goes, "Are you going to do another Ironman?" And I said, "No, they're too expensive and it's too much time." And she said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "I might run from Belfast to Waterford." And I love Irish women because they're brilliant. And she just looked at me and she goes, "Is that all?" She was only messing. She's "That all?" And Irish men are equally as funny, because I just turned around and said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Sure, in that case, I'll carry a washing machine." And she said, "Go on." And I said, "I will." And 9 months later, I walked out of the Europa Hotel in Belfast with a washing machine on my back. And I suppose the mental health message of it really worked in that it got huge media attention. We raised a lot of money, a couple of €100,000. And I suppose we came back from Belfast to Waterford. It was a massive success, but, we had, I suppose, I don't know, was it about a year and a half afterwards, we had a charity event. We were climbing Slieve na Mon in Tipperary with the washing machine. And afterwards we went to the pub, for the big chicken curry and a few pints. And we were sitting in the pub and someone said, "What's the tallest mountain in the world?" And someone said, "Mount Everest." And someone said to me, of all people, said, "I bet you couldn't carry the washing machine up at Mount Everest." And I was sitting there, I could feel my wife going, "No, no,
Oh,
no.
Jesus.
Oh, here we go." And then someone else looked up and they said, "Actually, it's not the tallest mountain in the world." And they had this debate, and they said Kilimanjaro is the tallest freestanding mountain. Mount Everest is the tallest, but it has to get help to stand up. Tanzania, Kilimanjaro is the highest. And about a year and a half later, 14, 16 hours training a week, most Saturdays and Sundays, 6 to 10 hours uphill with 40 kilos in a rucksack on your back. Got off a bus in Tanzania, and the way, like, everyone around the world, Matt, has heard about Irish people. They know we're a bit different, a bit funny, and we're interesting, and they like us.
A
If
bit
you saw the face of the Tanzanians when this Irish fella gets off a bus with a washing machine on his back, and they were like, "What the hell is going on here?"
Did you bring the washing machine with you?
Oh God, yeah, 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 yeah.
You
I used to
couldn't
tell.
in Power City over there now.
No, no, no. Well, I used to brag and tell people that I had the same sponsor as Lionel Messi, that we both worked for Beko. So Barcelona at the time I think they're still sponsored by Beko or Beko, and Beko washing machines were kind enough to sponsor my washing machine. So I started off with a Normende, and then I went up to a Beko, and I'm hoping for the Great Wall of China maybe in a couple of years' time, and hope we get an old Sony or a Zanussi then. I'm getting posh.
Are you gonna do it again?
Well, I'd love to. Do you know what? Anything that squeezed me, challenged me, or pressured me has made the biggest difference in life. Um, in a positive way. Like, there's pressure always in our life. There's eustress and there's stress. So regular stress makes us anxious, depressed, stops us sleeping, affects our appetite. But eustress, I suppose, really, it's good stress that allows us to perform. And I met people, I traveled places, I experienced things, I made friendships. Like, there are people who who climbed Kilimanjaro with me in that washing machine that I speak to every day of the week 2 years later, that they're as close as family. Like, of the people that went with us, it was life changing. Like, people came back and changed their job. People ran for politics, ran in elections. People change relationships. People change total direction in their life because, sometimes you get great clarity. We were going uphill for 8 days, started off at, I don't know, plus 30 degrees in the jungle, ended up at minus 20 on top of a mountain, 3 days walk above the clouds. It was an experience that, it's so hard to imagine. I was on the first 2 days, I got altitude sickness. I knew I was in real trouble, man. And I wouldn't recommend this, but puked all over my wife. And I half passed out on the ground. But I remember I was lying on the ground and I was like, God, Jesus, I've made a huge mistake here. This is terrible. I'm not going to get to the top of this mountain or anywhere near it. But um, what happened was one of the Tanzanians walked past and he went, Hakuna Matata. And apologies to anyone who speaks Swahili, but I thought I was about to tell this dude where he could stick the Lion King. I was like, no, I can't list this. But apparently, I didn't realize. But the Lion King is written in Swahili, and Hakuna Matata was, "Don't worry, everything will be okay. Keep going. Just push through. You'll get through." And Asher, it was magic. And the people that we met, like the Africans, like I was walking along one day and one of my guides was with me, and it was brilliant. We had a full medical team and doctor and everything, but one of the guides was walking along, and I sort of looked at my hand like that, and I said, Jesus, look at that. And my fingernails were completely, like really manky, like cheesy, greeny, blacky ooze, And I said, "Oh my God, what the hell is on my fingernails?" And this guy who was taking care of me, Emmanuel, he took my hand, he looked at it like that, and he goes, he said, "That's adventure," just
Yeah, yeah,
to the point. Like, and he had, like, here were we with the Westerners with all our fancy equipment, struggling to get up this mountain. They were literally running up and down the mountain. I said to him one day, I said, "How many times have you climbed the mountain?" And he said, 10 times this year. And I was like, holy God, how could you do this like 10 times in a year? I said, how is it possible? And again, just simple clarity in life. He said, because I love my children. No, no bullshit, no beating around the bush. That's why he was climbing the mountain.
Beautiful. Come here. I'm hugely into spirituality and synchronicity. You told me a beautiful story there when we had the chats on Sunday about that famous film actor. Could you share that story with us?
I don't want to share it because people are going to go, nah, that never happened. That never
I
happened.
don't.
But
I don't care.
we were coming down off Kilimanjaro, and sure, I had the usual. My wife was ever beside me. She said, "How bad are you?" And I was mashed. Like the feet were mashed, my head was mashed, and it had been a traumatic experience. Like someone had died on the mountain behind us that night. Lovely girl from Cork, a CrossFitter, and it's a dangerous place, and altitude is dangerous, But I was coming down anyway, and my wife said, "How tired are you?" And I said, "I'm whacked, really whacked." She said, "How whacked is whacked?" And I said, "Oh, I'm seeing stuff." And she said, "What stuff?" And I said, I laughed and I said, "Indiana Jones." So she sort of laughed and I laughed and we thought nothing of it. And there was a couple in front of us and they kept walking and walking and walking. And we got to the very end off the mountain down to the car park. And this fella's getting into his car and his bus with his wife. And I just walking past him. And I just said, "Good morning." This guy goes, "Hi, good morning." And it was Indiana Jones. It was Harrison Ford and his wife.
No way.
On the mountain on the same day. Now, I wasn't quick enough to take photographs. Some of the other crew got photographs of Harrison there, but what I was delighted was that he looked like the back of a bus. Because, like every Christmas you see him on telly and he's gorgeous, and my wife thinks he's gorgeous. Most women probably think he's gorgeous, but that I don't know, was it 30 years ago that was filmed? So he's not quite as gorgeous now, Like he's like the rest of us, man. He's gone downhill.
And I
But
wouldn't say we're gorgeous. We're like two boy next door when they're gonna go in.
well, I like to think I've done the aging now. This is me for the next 20 years. I'm not going I can't lose any more hair. I can't go any grayer. So I'm going to be like this. But I was magic, it was magic experience. And, I'd love to share a story with you. When we got to Kilimanjaro Airport and we were coming back, and I saw this girl, this African girl, and she was walking around the airport, and I could see her looking up at the monitor, and I just instinctively knew she didn't know what she was at. So I went over to her and I said, "Are you okay?" And her English was pretty good, and she explained that she was getting a flight, but she wasn't sure what does a gate mean? And I said, "Oh." So I said, "Gates are where you go onto the plane." And she said, "It's my first time in a plane." And I said, "Oh God, you love it." So we got on the plane and I was sitting behind her, and we flew from Tanzania to Ethiopia to get the flight back to Ireland. And you know the little screen with which shows the route of your flight.
Yeah.
For an hour and a half, she watched the little plane, and she was amazed, you know. But so when we got in the airport, we ended up sitting in a lounge together, and this kid told me that she was from a small village in the middle of Tanzania, and she'd won a scholarship to study medicine in Los Angeles. She'd never been on a plane before. She'd never been away from home before, you know. And there was a gang, all our crew were there, about 30 Irish, you know. And I love this. You know, you're talking about meeting people for a reason at the right time and the right people. Without a single word of plan or cooperation, every single Irish person took every single dollar they had on them and gave it to this kid going to Africa, going to Los Angeles. So she got money after money after money, and people like gave her iPods and gave her batteries and gave her phone cards, and she took all this, and she was, you know, like totally overcome, and she was thank you, thank you. And she said, where are we from? With Ireland. She'd never even heard of Ireland. You know, her first time she heard of Ireland were these people giving her stuff. And she went off to LA, and you know, we were talking about ourselves and saying, she's going to get some shock when she arrives in LA. You know, not I hope she's not going to assume that everyone in the world is going to want to lift her and care for her. But like the chances of us meeting her on that day on that flight, just, you know, just bloody brilliant, you know, just magical, you know.
And that's one thing about Irish people, isn't it? We are terribly, terribly generous, and we love to look after people if they're down and, you know,
Yeah,
in the dumps, or they're not
yeah,
having good luck. We'll put our hand in our pocket, or we'll put an arm around them.
yeah. And you know, this is a weird thing to say. So when we trained for Kilimanjaro for a year in harsh conditions in the mountains in Ireland, and when we got to Africa, like it was 8 days uphill every night, sleeping on a slope, every night, you know, very little oxygen. It was tough, tough. And one of the things I remarked about the Irish people who were with us was the more pressure they were under, the more they were squeezed, the harder it got for them. Their first reaction every single time was to reach out to the person to the left or right of them. So they bottled up their own anxieties, their own fears, their own doubts, their own pain, and it manifests itself in care for people around them. And it's not a would that be a brilliant society, you know, if we could have more of that, you know, that our first instinct is to help other people, you know.
Yeah, well, you just said it earlier about you love helping other people. You know, and I truly believe when you're kind, two people receive. When you do charity, two people receive. Like when you teach, two people learn. And it's what we do. And I think everyone has that innate ability if they just tapped into and listened to their heart. And that's what pain and hurt and addiction and trauma has done for you. It's open your heart, as Rumi says. It's only when we open the curtains we can see the cracks. It allows the light in, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. And you know, when I put up on social media that I was looking for people to come to Africa, like we did a very, I suppose, a very unusual thing, a hard thing. So, you know, sometimes people fundraise that cover their costs for the trip. So I felt I didn't want people fundraising for a holiday. So I said anyone who comes has to pay, it was nearly 4 grand. You had to save up your own money to pay for everything yourself. And the other thing I did, Matt, was I asked everyone coming to raise €4,000 for a mental health charity, right? But the funny thing is, when they rang me, you know, I never asked. I explained to people coming that the average cost of treatment for someone in Ireland is somewhere around 800 to €1,000. So when people rang me and asked me what was involved, I never asked them to raise €4,000. I asked them to help me save 4 people's lives, and that was a total privilege. I think if I'd asked people to raise 4,000, that sounds like, you know, jerseys for the football club, or it's a pain in the ass. It's something you don't want to be doing. But, you know, making a difference to help other people, like almost nobody who came hit 4,000. You know, they were all 6, 7, €8,000 raised because they knew what they were doing was really important, you know. And it's funny too. I started off thinking it was about raising money, and to be honest, the money really wasn't the issue. The issue was those people who came with me on both adventures went out to their communities. They talked about depression. They talked about anxiety, the damage and danger of alcoholism, drug addiction. They talked about suicide in their communities, and they made a difference.
It's that ripple effect. It's the
Yeah,
ripple effect, you know, one on to do in a tree. And that's what
yeah,
kindness does. It's contagious.
yeah. It is. Yeah, I did a video there at the start of lockdown, talking to people like were freaking out about COVID, and I was freaking out myself. And then I sort of reminded myself that happiness is contagious, and so is care, and so is laughter. You know, do you ever watch a movie on your own, Matt, and you go, "That's all right," like, you know, smiley, but it wasn't funny. Watch the same movie in the cinema, and you know, some fella in front of you has a funny laugh, and some woman behind you has a squeaky laugh or a funny laugh, and next thing you're laughing at them, they hear you laughing, they're laughing at you, laughing at them, you're laughing at the movie together, and there is a contagion. But like
Emotions
the
are contagious, like stress. Like you, somebody stressed or anxious in the house, or there's a gang of people, and if you get stressed, it
yeah
ripples around, and the whole thing is like, what we worry about? I don't know. They're worried, so I'm fucking worried.
yeah. I heard Bob Carley speaks about. I think he's involved with Suicide or Survive, and I heard him speak. He was talking one day at a conference we were at, and he said a great thing. He was saying, you know, our natural instinct sometimes, particularly with multi social media, is to worry. Like he said,
Yeah,
you know, he's having a breakfast and he sees on the news the yen has gone down 2%, and he said his natural instinct go, Jesus, Mother Christ, the yen has gone down, and then he realizes he doesn't know how much it's worth. He doesn't have any. He doesn't spend any. You know,
yeah.
5,000 people killed an avalanche, you know, in Chile, and it's terrible news. But there's a bit of us goes, geez, I better be careful today going to work. You know,
Yeah.
a
It
lot of
triggers
snow.
it triggers that negative bias in us. You know, it triggers like that's why papers and media sell. You know, news sells because it works off that fear, that fight or flight. You know, we can keep people on edge, and that's why
Yeah,
the pandemic is having such an effect. We're all on high up to our nellies in cortisol.
yeah. So I wrote a piece, and it'll be in the Irish Independent next Monday. They do a health and lifestyle thing. So I wrote a piece about exactly that, about, you know, that you can choose happiness, you can choose positivity, you can choose to do good things. Like we can't stop COVID, and like it's a horrible, horrible, scary time, and people have lost jobs, and people have lost family and friends and died. You know, it's been it's been the hardest time. But um, for me personally, loads of good things came out of it. You know, like I ate great food, and I spent loads of time with my grown up kids. I spent time with them I'd never have had. I went back to college and learned stuff I'd never have learned. Like I met people I would never have met. You know,
Yeah,
and I was saying to you, like when we were chatting before, that I lost that fear. Just give it a lash. You know, I had listened to some of the stuff you'd been putting out, and I said, geez, that fella sounds interesting. I just said, say hello, send him a message, get chatting, make an effort. So there's loads of good things can come out of it, you know. But you're right, it's easy to fall into the trap where, you know, you focus on the negative, you focus on the doom and gloom, and that's what you get. Then, you know, it becomes your
yeah.
norm.
Myself and Andy made a conscious decision when the start of the lockdown, the force, and we said, you know what, we're going to show up because like I've had mental health difficulties all my life with the drink and the drugs, and I've had a similar situation, similar to COVID, fear, not knowing what the next day is going to do. But I was good. I just said, you know what, I'm going to feel okay, and we just showed up. We made videos, we made loads of content, we supported people, and you know, it was a conscious choice. It's either, you know, choose fear or choose love, and we stepped in. And some days I didn't want to. Some days were really difficult, but it was a choice of making love being the option, not rather than fear and worry. You know, and
Yeah.
sometimes I've done the work, so it's a little bit easier for me. But it's only when we look back we could join the dots, and it's only when you see how far you've come, you can see how resilient you are. And people will learn from this.
Yeah, I think they will. I think a lot of people experienced, you know, people who really didn't maybe get mental health issues. I think a lot of people suddenly experienced extreme anxiety and background fear and, you know, permanent exhaustion, not knowing why you're tired the whole time, or not knowing, you know, that if anyone who's familiar with depression or anxiety, you know, like I'm knackered, I have to go to bed. You go to bed, I can't sleep. I'll get up, I'll do something. I'm knackered, I'll go back to bed. I can't sleep, and then the
Yeah,
next day your head is fried, and you know, someone can say to you, how are you? And that exhausted part of your brain that's vulnerable and broken says, what did they mean by that? What did you hear the Tonys? Like, and the next thing is, you know, 4 days later, you're still playing it back, you know, and that's just because it's because you're broken, because you're stressed and you're tired, you know.
yeah. What was the process of writing the book like for you? When did that kick off? You tell me about that.
Jeez. Yeah, so my friend of mine helped me write it, Dermot Keys. He's a journalist and brilliant guy. But when I did the last part of the marathon, ninth marathon, walked into Waterford, he was one of the journalists who turned up and he took some photos and did an interview. And he'd never written a book. And when I asked him would he help me, he was like, I've never written a book. And I said, I don't care. He said, why me? And I said, because you understand my story. We clicked. I just, you know, when you just have an
Yeah,
energy, a synergy between someone. So the deal was, for a year, I met him on a Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. And he asked the question and I'd yap away. And I have to say, sometimes, you know, when we talked about great times and funny times and some of the stories I've shared with you today, you know, I was flying for the whole day. I was on the tip of my toes laughing, and people said, geez, you're in great form today. But other times when we talked about, you know, the pain of addiction or trying to get sober, or, you know, we did a chapter on my mother. Those days are hard, you know. Like, I mean, part of what I do is tell people my story. But being honest, it hurts sometimes, you know. Like if you pull the scab off your knee, it's going to bleed. It's going to hurt. Some days the scab just comes away and it's grand and you can move on with the day. Some days you're reliving it, you're revisiting it. It's tiring. It's stressful. It makes me sad, you know. Like I'm enjoying our chat, but I know for a fact when this is over, I will be absolutely wiped. You know, and it's not unusual when I finish a podcast, particularly if we're talking about mental health or personal stuff. It's not unusual to have a good cry when we finish. That it's, you know, it's raw. But the writing the process, you know, it was great. If you asked me to write down 10 things, Matt, if anyone's thinking about writing a book about their story, or if you asked me to write down 10, if I made a list of 10 things I'd like to get from the book, what I actually got from the book in the end, none of those 10 was on the list. You know, it's crazy. Like and I'd say to people, like, open your mind and open your heart to new experiences, new people, and a new journey. Because, like I say, I've met people, I've done things that I couldn't ever have imagined that life would put in front of me, you know. And it's been great. It's been really, really great. You know, I used to start off thinking I'd change the car, you know, massive sales. And then I realized as we go through the process, I'd be lucky if I changed the back wheels on the car, you know.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I get most of my books away. I like you, and I just love giving things to people. I like being of service. I want people, you know, here, if this makes you happy, is this going to bring love and kindness into your heart? Fucking have that, get it into you, you know,
Yeah,
nourish on that, you know.
yeah.
Sales is not really important to me, or money, love and
No,
kindness, like,
well, you know, I spoke at a conference. The Kildare County Council had me come and speak. They had a mental health week, and they had me as their keynote speaker. It was brilliant, and you know, it went down so well. They actually did it for a corporate body. Did a brilliant thing. They had everyone in the county council come to hear me speak about how to look after your mental health, and I literally the whole staff, from the street sweepers right up to the, you know, the top CEOs in the corporation. But do you know, I met a woman at one of the big presentations. This lady said to me, she heard me speak. She came up at the end. She said, "Look, I was having a terrible day." She said, "I just want to thank you for the energy and the positivity." And I said, "Oh, you're welcome," you know. And she said to me, "You know, we're doing IVF at home at the moment, and I don't know how she done it 2 or 3 times and was getting nowhere." And she said, "I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to bring this energy home. I'm going to tell my husband we're going to the credit union. We're going again." And I was like, "Oh, you know, a bit awkward." I was like, "Oh, thanks," you know. But fast forward a few months and I got this email, and there was no text in. And I opened this email and I recognized the address from this particular department. And here's a picture of this woman sitting with a newborn baby. Right now, I'm not saying I have the power to impregnate people with podcasts, or, you know, if anyone's listening to this, you're completely safe, right? But isn't it magic that you could give someone hope and energy, and that could be literally turn into a person? I still look at that picture and go, oh my God, like, what a day to think that you touched someone's life like that, or someone heard you, and it's magic. Like, you know, it's really, really great, you know.
yeah, that's a beautiful story. That's unbelievable. Was
Yeah.
the kid was the kid called Enda?
No, geez, I don't know. I don't know. That's where the story stopped. That's where the story stopped. But you're saying about choice, Matt. Like I had did you ever sit in a train and put something on your bag, or put something on a chair so that nobody could sit beside you?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Or did you ever put headphones in with your no battery? You know, so you didn't. You know,
Yeah,
you're
I'll pick
sitting.
up your letting on your talking to
Yeah,
someone.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'll see you Tuesday. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you don't want to talk to someone. Usually because it's some weirdo who's going to sit and talk to you for too long. So I'm the weirdo who talks to you for too long.
yeah.
So I promise you, it's my last story. So I was flying. Oh, it's good. It's a good while ago. I was flying to Austria and I was going to Vienna, and sat beside this man and his wife on the plane. He was in the middle seat, and his arm was sort of like squinched up, you know, like if you had a burn or a scar.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, I couldn't help myself. I can't stay quiet for 10 seconds. I said to this lad, I said, "Geez, that's a rough scar. What happened to your arm?" And your man just said to me, we started chatting, and he told me that he was a concentration camp survivor, And it wasn't a scar on his arm. The scar on his arm, he explained to me, was that he had come out of Auschwitz, and that when the Nazis were captured and the camp was liberated, I think by the Russians, he took a knife and he cut off the SS number that was on his arm, right? And I was sitting there going, "Oh Jesus, I've opened a can of worms." Like, and I said to him, "Look, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to, to be intrusive." And he said, "No, no." He said, "Look, I made a choice." He said, "I'd rather my scar than their number of hate, because they thought I was, an object." And this man told me about, he'd gone to America, and he had, got married. He actually married a woman she had been a child in Auschwitz as well. And he had kids that grew up Americans. He had his own business. He was a successful man. And here he was at the end of his life going back to Austria to visit his hometown since the war, first time since the war, And you were saying there about we can choose to do what we want to do in our lives. So he told me all this stuff, and I was like, "Oh my God, like how lucky am I to sit beside you today?" And I said to him, "I'm amazed that you have such a positive attitude, and you're so happy, and he had no hate, he had no malice in him, And it's a line I often use when I'm talking to people. But like he said this thing. He said, we're masters of our own destiny. I chose happiness. I chose a life to be full of happiness." And like I can remember walking through Vienna airport and being like someone hit me over the head. Like, what an amazing moment. I chose happiness. I choose, like, bad things that happened to him in his life, terrible things that happened that most of us can only imagine in movies, This man had lived it, but he was like, "No, I chose a different way. I chose happiness," Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Really brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's your why in life?
What's my why? I don't know. I really don't know. Do you know, sometimes people think when you're in the public eye, like as a speaker, or, when you talk about issues, people think you've everything figured out. Your man's on the ball. He knows what he's at. He's a motivational speaker. Like, they think when you're a motivational speaker, you get out of bed every morning, you go, "Let's do this, man." Like Callum, or pumped.
Yeah,
Or people,
Superman.
yeah, they think, "Oh, you go to the gym. It's so easy every day." Like,
Oh,
I have days where I'm sitting in the car park outside the gym going, "Oh my God, I can't, my ass is killing. I cannot walk. My hamstrings are so sore. I'm falling apart. I don't want to do it." And, the funny thing too is like
yeah.
most
Why do you
times, do you know what? I don't know, man. I know before I speak, I'm always terrified. Like, honest to God, I could go to the toilet 1,000 times and the cold sweat is running off me when I'm speaking in public. But I suppose when it's over, I do get that buzz, that magic, that I've done something, and I've overcome that fear. I suppose, what's my why? My why probably is overcoming, and my why is probably change too, like to get better, to do things differently. I think it's because, being honest, I think it's because I wasted so many years of my life in the bottle of a can or bottom of a bottle, and I'm hungry now to live. I'm hungry to do stuff, to learn stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to sit in the couch, like I don't want to sit in the couch like I was for years, like, you know, semi comatose, thinking I was living, and when I know now I was just surviving.
I think you just love giving back. You've been very generous with me, with your time and your knowledge, and now this here. And it seems to me your why is to give back to society. You're a very generous human being.
Thanks, man. Well, I said to you, like, I'm always unhappy when people go down that road because they think I'm a saint, and then I let a ripper of a fart go or something, and they're very disappointed in me.
Oh, way I'm gonna blow smoke up your hole. I'm just gonna. You're a nice guy, but if you're any other way, I'd fucking tell you. Come
Yeah,
here.
I know you would, but I don't know. We're bad in Ireland too. Except I travel a good bit, and I see, in Ireland, if you give someone a compliment, you say, "Mary, that dress is beautiful." Oh, that whole thing, Jesus, with pennies, 9.99, and it just, you deflect it, or, like, even I did it there. You give some lovely compliments and kind words, and instantly we have to, redirect it. But yeah, thanks.
It's what we do. We're not used to. We're used to defending ourselves. We're used to, schoolyard snide comments. Look at the state of you. Where'd you get dressed in the wardrobe, or all this? And then when somebody says it, you go, "Oh, Jesus, you're looking well, man. You're looking sharp. That's nice." You're like, "Is this fella taking a piss out of me, or
Yeah,
what?"
what do you want? What does he want?
Yeah. Like, I like saying nice things to people, and I like nice things being said to me. It's counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
You know, it's nice. It's just a nice way of living. Come here, we're getting near the time. What's the one thing you'd like people to take away after listening to this interview?
Well, I suppose I'll stick with my original message with the washing machine is if you're under pressure, talk to someone, share the load. Like my life changed and dramatically improved when I talked about my problems and when I dealt with my problems and I got help with my problems. So I'd say, if you're number one thing I'd say to people take coming away from this is share the load. The other thing I'd say is like if you're going through a bad time, if you're in dark clouds and you can't see a way out, like I always say to people, there's beautiful sunshine the far side. You just have to muck on. Keep going, one foot in front of the other. Keep going through that storm. On the walk from Belfast to Waterford, Matt. So I lost all of my toenails. I lost the fat pads on my feet. My heel came off. I had combustible diarrhea, and then it got really, really hard because I broke my 2 feet, fractured both feet. Because like I was 100 kilos, the washing machine was 40, and 140 kilos hitting the ground for 10 hours a day, your body breaks. But the funny
Jesus.
thing was, on the last marathon, on the last 5 minutes, I had the same decision to make that I made on the first 5 minutes, was just keep going. Just take one step, just move forward. And, if you are suffering or you're in a bad place and you're watching this, like sometimes it's just that persistence, just that ability to say, bugger, I'll hold on for one more minute or one more hour or one more day. And things do turn around, no matter how bad you think they are, and equally so, I know um, I'm very lucky to meet a lot of people and share my story with people. But I know from a lot of people that, sometimes if addiction is in your home, that, it's the pain and the toxicity of it infects everyone. And you might not be the person with the drug addiction or the alcohol addiction, but you might be suffering in the most horrible way because someone you love is falling apart or someone you love is not coping. And the same thing applies to those people. I promise you better days ahead. Just keep going.
Absolutely fantastic. That's brilliant. And that's, I love that interview. You embody what you speak, you embody who you are. Like you reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and then I told you're struggling and you offered to help me. And here we are now having the chats, it's amazing when you surround yourself with good people. It truly is. The universe will give you what you put out. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Like, do have you ever had an argument with someone and like 3 days later or 3 hours later, you say, I should have told him where to stick that. I should have said, and yet the perfect line comes 3 days later. But the perfect line came to me once in an interview. Some guy asked me, what was your greatest achievement? Was it climbing Kilimanjaro with a washing machine? Was it Ironman? Was it Belfast to Waterford? And for once, it just came out, no rehearsal, it just came out, man. I just said to him, best achievement ever by a mile in my life is surrounding myself with positive, happy people because it really, like we were talking about earlier, it really is infectious. And like make an effort to consciously identify people who will inspire you, people who will care for you, people who will help you, and invest your energy and invest your love in them.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. I can't go without saying, even when we spoke last week, even in this interview, your wife and your family seem to be the absolute pillar in your pursuit, which is fantastic, and it's lovely. Fair play to them. It's deadly.
Thanks a million. Thanks so much.
Okay,
Hey,
and it's
Matt, can I ask you a really important question? Tell me about your sponsors.
Before we get to that, where can people find you if they want to work with you, if they want to check out your book is called I'm Fine, which
Yeah,
I'm
hang
going
on,
to
hang on.
read.
Shameless,
Where
shameless. Oh, I know. Shameless plug. There you go. I'm fine. Me screaming the opposite. You can.
bring it up, no, bring it back up, bring it back and bring it down. Ah, yeah, there you go. Bring it back. Lovely, jubbly.
Blue screen is killing it a little bit, but you can. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available signed copy on endo.ie. And do you know what? I think it's a great read. I wanted it to be the book. I didn't want like it's a book of hope, a book of happiness. When you go on holidays, man, and you're on the last day before the holidays over. Do you remember holidays? You do. Do you remember the thing?
Well, it's a Mosney.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, when before COVID, when we used to go on holidays, when you finish the book and the last day of the holidays, you throw the broken flip flops in the bin and the T-shirt that's
Yeah,
covered in sun crank, you're not bringing that home. And I don't know, it's an Irish thing we do. We like empty all our old socks and jocks into the bin, in Spain or wherever you are, and you throw all the holiday books away. And I wanted this to be a book that someone read and they go, they're packing the bag the night they're coming home and they go, do you know what, I'm bringing that with me and I'm going to give it to my cousin or I'm going to give that to my uncle or do you know what, I'm going to read that again next year, and So far, so good. You know, it's I'm absolutely delighted with people's reaction to it. That the most common thing people say to me is that I cried and I laughed my head off, and you know that it's something different. You know, and I've always striven to do, you know, just do things my own way, and you know it's not going to win, and it's not going to win a Nobel Peace Prize or a Pulitzer Prize, but I think it's a bloody good story. You know, it sounds a bit far fetched. You know, did you hear the one about the Irish fella that ran around the place with a washing machine in his back? It's
I can't wait. I can't wait to read it. Right, I'll tell you about my sponsors. Before we go, I want to thank Noel Roney from Rooney Media Graphics. If you need any graphic design, any work done that way, they're absolutely fantastic. Also, Andy from Liberty Media Hub. My pals Sandra and Lisa Callagher from Shannon's Hope Line, they're doing amazing work in my community, looking after mental health, grassroots mental health, preventing suicide and improving people's well-being. They're absolutely fantastic. And then the Liberty Soup Run, great work that Fran and Chris are doing, looking after people around the area who are homeless. And to you, the listeners, thanks very much for all your support and sharing our work. Please share this with family and friends. As always, mind your little self. When you mind you, you're a much kinder and compassionate person in the world. When you start minding and being careful with yourself and your own mental health, you see the world totally different. Isn't that right? And back me up, brother.
100%. I love it. I love it. I said it with great smile, panache, and a smile.
Thanks very much, guys. See y'all later. Take care.